Welcome to Assessing and Addressing Workforce Performance Solutions by Design. I'm Karen Carlton of Performance Solutions, a workplace learning and performance consultancy based in Edmonton, Alberta. This three-part video series will focus on moving from training to performance, the 5 enabling conditions for great workplace performance, and some ideas for assessing and addressing employee needs. If you think about how much training actually gets used at work, sadly, the statistics say it's about 10 to 25%. Why so low? Well, often the training could be given to the wrong people at the wrong time or for the wrong reasons. Also, the training may be developed poorly or delivered poorly. One of the other important factors is that often on-the-job training or off-the-job training is not supported when people get back to the workplace. And this can leave training managers in the training department feeling like this guy. A lot of money is spent on training every year in the US and in Canada. This figure is actually down from $171 billion in the height of employee spending on training and development in 2008. Unfortunately, when this happens and results are not achieved, it's a colossal waste for the training department and doesn't result in adding value to the organization. As well, this situation can blind us to thinking that training is the only solution when in fact there are multiple causes of performance challenges, often which are not related to a lack of knowledge and skills. So training is in fact a solution that addresses a lack of knowledge or skills, or a gap. Those causes of performance challenges that are not related to this are not going to be resolved through training. Ideally, you want to close the gap between the current and the desired results, but there is a presumed connection that learning is going to lead to retention, which is going to lead to performance improvement. And that isn't always the case. There are a multitude of factors that affect whether or not people have learned, whether or not they've retained, and whether or not they can apply what they've learned. Here is a quick example of Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of training evaluation model. Level 1 measures how do the learners like the training, their satisfaction. Level 2 measures the acquisition of knowledge and skills. Level 3 measures the transfer of learning or the application on the job, usually seen as behavior change. And at the 4th level, we measure and to what end did that training help the organization. Now, most organizations stop at measuring level 1, or the satisfaction, often referred to as the smiley sheet. If we think about training and contrast it with performance, we've got an analogy to help us. If you're learning how to fish, someone will help impart that knowledge and the skills related to fishing. But it's important to think about the environmental conditions as well. If you happen to have a broken rod or you're at a lake without fish, you will not be achieving the desired results in terms of catching those fish. So looking at the bigger picture, the environmental conditions in which that performance occurs is really important. On the performance training continuum, we can think of training starting off with the knowledge or the learning of skills and knowledge, typically in the classroom. And then we can think of the skill-based training that would be needed to actually relate to what you need to perform on the job. So if we were thinking about skydiving, you might very well take the classroom portion or the theoretical portion in a class, but then you'd also want to have some skills practice where you actually prepare to jump. There are reasons why people aren't able to use the training that they've gotten. And again, this is level 3, or the behavior change that you expect. There are a number of reasons why people aren't able to apply it. So let's take the example of software. If a company buys new software, they send an employee for training, but it takes them a few months before they install that software, that person's memory is going to likely degrade and they're going to not be able to transfer it as well. Sometimes it's a matter of organizational culture and people just simply thinking, well, we don't do things like that around here. So there's a variety of reasons why training may not get used on the job. Now here's a case of two different training groups of refinery operators at Petro-Canada. They were in two different regions and they had two different training solutions. One group received classroom training and the other group received on-the-job coaching. The classroom training group needed 24,000 hours, whereas the on-the-job coaching group received 8,000 hours. Interestingly, the results for the two groups were very different. Why? Well, let me tell you. The reason that the better results were achieved in terms of reduced time to competency, better safety, and better work quality with the coaching on the job group was because their training was more relevant and more realistic than that which was received by the classroom group. And interestingly, it also increased the productivity of those workers who received the on-the-job coaching. So interesting, two different training solutions. Now, when training doesn't get the desired results, sadly, trainers lose credibility. And unfortunately, the training department can be seen as wasting resources or not adding value or as much value as they could to the organization. And this harms all of us. It's important to have a results focus and keep that end in mind, as Covey would say. When we do that, often we can leverage our motivation by visualizing our outcome that we want. So, for example, if you think about renovations at home, it's very costly, it's very time consuming, but we can sustain our motivation by thinking about that desirable end result, having a comfortable, functional home that we can be proud of. Why would we want to move from training to a performance focus? Well, looking at the broader picture is valuable because if we think about ourselves as training order takers, which those of you in training may have at times felt like, it's very limiting. And it also negates a focus on other solutions or other potential causes for performance challenges in the workplace. As well, it's important to have those conversations with line managers to determine what are some other reasons why people are performing as they are. If you're thinking about performance, what is performance and what it isn't, it's definitely not behaviors in the short term that don't have measurable outcomes. And these are typically things that are done in the present tense. So, for example, if you think about running can be done under a variety of circumstances for a variety of reasons and achieve a wide range of results. Performance is more so results that have been achieved under specific circumstances to reach specific goals. And many of you probably are familiar with the SMART acronym, the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, which is very helpful for solidifying your goals. That would be where you want to focus if you're looking at performance. So again, back to our runner analogy, if you're looking at a results focus or performance focus, you would want to consider how you could beat your own time or win a race. That would be accomplishment rather than behavior. Performance results in organizations are important, particularly for trainers if that is what you're trying to achieve. And it depends, again, on the outcomes. Are they clear? Are they rewarded? Are people motivated to achieve them? Are the conditions in place that will help reach those goals? So if you think about safety training, the training itself is more so a behavior. You've got the number of people who've completed the training and the compliance checks, which are important. However, it doesn't necessarily equate with zero incidents. So again, you have to look at all the factors involved, such as feedback, incentives, equipment, and such. Systems thinking is a great way to approach learning in the workplace and performance. I like to think about systems in the workplace as 3 levels: workplace, work process, and worker. So systems thinking in general is looking at the part, the whole, and the parts rather, the interrelated parts of the whole. So same thing with your body. Your body is a system with different parts, so sometimes you might have a symptom in one area which signals a problem in another. And similarly in organizations, we can think of them as systems. So if we have new software implemented, we're all going to be entering data differently. In all likelihood, we're going to need learning and performance support for those staff. Here's another case of where the 3 W's align, and this was with call center customer service representatives. The CSRs were not actively resolving customers' issues when they were phoning in, and unfortunately, the company was starting to lose customers as a result. After a little bit of analysis, it was realized that a lot of the CSRs didn't know where to turn, and they were passing the buck, passing customers off to others, not knowing if it would solve their problem. Additionally, looking at how their performance or their work was evaluated, the standards by which they were judged was how quickly they got off the call or their efficiency, not their effectiveness. So with a few minor changes, including a job aid and different performance standards or measured on effectiveness of call resolution, then we were able to improve performance for this organization. In another case study, there's a case of a process plant with ambitious production targets being set. Now, increasingly, operators would rise to the occasion to meet these goals. However, they often took shortcuts because production became the predominant focus over safety and work quality. This in turn resulted in more incidents and more stress, which also led to absenteeism. Additionally, working the equipment that hard, that often, resulted in more equipment breakdowns. And downstream, it impacted workers when there were shutdowns. So as you can see, there are different parts in organizations that are related and can interact. Here's my favorite quote by 2 performance experts. This makes us realize that organizations or systems and conditions in systems really need to be looked at. Simply blaming employees for a lack of motivation, lack of capability, is usually an easy out. The root causes tend to run a lot deeper, and solutions go a lot deeper as well. We could think about the 3 W's, or work, worker, and workplace, as a performance cycle. What workers do achieve certain work results and in turn lead to workplace contributions, such as revenue. Here are a couple more examples of the alignment between work, workers, and workplace. To recap, training is a great solution for closing knowledge or skill gaps. Performance problems caused by other issues are not going to be resolved by training. Having a results focus as opposed to a training delivery focus is really important, as are aligning the training to the work, the workplace, and the worker, and namely keeping those results in the forefront of our minds so that training's credibility can be upheld. If you like this video, click like below and subscribe for more. Stay tuned for part 2 and 3 of this video series.